that old school mentality of like, I need someone to yell at me and scream at me so that I can get this thing done. Like, I need someone to whip my ass into shape. I have people tell me that today. And it is so far from the truth of what is actually necessary to sustain weight loss, to lose weight, to do any sort of new goal. Welcome to the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast, the podcast where we debunk the eat less, move more, shrink more mentality and focus on what really matters, which includes your relationship with your body, food, self-worth, and the behaviors that align with all of those. I'm your host, Christina Hathaway, licensed therapist with specialized training in food and body obsession, certified personal trainer and nutrition coach. At the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast, we believe what you say in your mind, you see in the mirror. So let's have a conversation about that. Before we get into today's episode, I want to make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, if you don't want to miss any content that's being dropped, make sure you hit that notification bell as well. I also want to know who are the people you want to hear from on this show and what topics would you like me to continue to cover. Thank you so much for your continued support. Now, let's get into the episode. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast. I am so excited to talk to you today. And we are talking about Fit for TV, the Biggest Loser documentary. I'm going to throw my 2 cents in because obviously I should. But the reason why I want to do that is because that documentary is just an extreme version of a lot of stuff that we see out there on the market today. And being that my whole goal is to change that industry, of course, I'm going to chime in. But for those of you who are new to this podcast, I'm going to just talk about life and myself, have you get to know me, see what's going on. So if you don't want to hear anything about my life, you can check out the show notes when I start the conversation about the documentary. So as y'all know, it's been a rough 3 weeks or so. However, I want to talk about how some of the things that I have been watching that have completely allowed me to distract myself and feel good. And one of the things that I somehow fell upon was Bama Rush on TikTok. So if you don't know what Bama Rush is, it is the sorority rush process for the University of Alabama. And Kylan Darnell, I believe her name is, was one of the first girls to start posting on TikTok about her rush process, her outfits of the day. They would talk about the jewelry they have, the shoes, the clothes, the bags. And she ended up becoming like a very successful influencer. She also still, this is her senior year, so she's still, doing her thing. And now all these girls who rush, they go through this process and they go through all of their outfits of the day and all of that. Sorry, I'm getting texts. And it's so interesting. Number one, the sororities themselves, the amount of money these sororities are spending on the rush process. I mean, the balloon arches alone had to cost $10,000. I'm not even joking. Plus these videos that they do, they're doing choreography and everyone's, involved and they're like completely like, they're almost like a production. It's insane. Even here in Arizona State, like one of our family friends, she's in a sorority here and I was watching even her sorority video and I was like, oh my God, like this is literally a music video. So that's number one. Number two, these gals, they come on, they're like, hi, I'm so-and-so. Most of them have a Southern accent. They're very cute. I'm not making fun of it. I love it. And yeah, it's Bama Rush Day. And then they would tell you like it's day one of philanthropy. It's day one of sisterhood. And then you have like your preference day and bid day. Now, obviously your girl did not rush. I was asked to be in a sorority, but I did not end up doing it because I was already on the dance team and I worked full time. So I didn't have time for that shit. And then also I just met some guys in a fraternity and they would just invite me to all their parties. So I was like, perfect. There we go. I don't have to worry about that. So anyway, and these girls, the clothes, it's all like Lily Pulitzer, what's E. Newton, which I have a couple E. Newton bracelets, Cartier, geez, I'm missing Altered State, On Cloud for their shoes, or Hoka's. Those are apparently really cool. Tiffany, Gucci, and David Yurman, even some higher name brands. So I was infatuated. And there was a few girls that I followed. One girl, her name was Tanisha. A lot of them are involved in the pageant world. So that was interesting to see all the pageant girls. And they obviously were pageant ready, whereas then there was your like normal girls who weren't pageant ready. But I think majority of the girls I followed got a bid, and it was just such an, for someone who never gone through the process, I was infatuated. Like, big damn, like refreshing TikTok to see if my girl Tanisha got in. She did. Congrats to her. If she's listening, I doubt it. And it was such a freaking distraction, and I just thought I had to talk about it on here. But the process itself seems so odd. Like, you really are being judged on like your appearance, because why would we put so much effort into these outfits? And like, some of the days they were like elaborate dresses, other days it'd be like a Lululemon skirt or an Alo skirt. But like, parents are spending tens of thousands of dollars so their daughter can rush a sorority. Some of them even hire rush coaches. And there's a Lifetime series on it, which I have not watched yet, which I needed to give myself a break. Oh, I forgot. Kendra Scott is the necklace I'm wearing. That's another brand. I'm on brand today with my brands. And like, almost some of the mothers have their own TikToks about the rush experience. So it's mad. And if anyone has gone through this process with their daughter recently, I want to hear your stories, because now I'm in it. I'm listening to the Gia Judice has a podcast on the rush process, and like, it's like a reality show, right? They should have a reality show. Well, I guess they do. They have a reality show on Lifetime. So that was something that I got my hands on. The other thing I got my hands on was Perfect Match on Netflix, and that was okay. I mean, Mark and I like binged it, but I wasn't like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? You know, it's interesting when shows record so like far between when they're actually posted. Cause like all these people, it was like a year ago when they posted this, or when they recorded it, excuse me. And all these people already have other lives, and things have leaked about like certain people on the show who have new partners and all of that. So that was another thing that was helpful. And then also, I am excited. Today is the finale, or the reunion of Love Island. So stay tuned for that. But those were some of my guilty pleasures while I was taking some time for myself. And one of the things I watched was Fit for TV, the Biggest Loser documentary. So for those of you who don't remember, Biggest Loser was a competition show where individuals in larger bodies would come on this show. They would weigh in front of people wearing a sports bra or their shirt off, which was very demeaning. And then they would be put through these very extreme exercise routines, be given these very extreme meal challenges, but also, of course, being able to, eat in a calorie deficit as well. Because the goal was whoever lost the most won the Biggest Loser, and they won money, right? And a part of the process were these really intense trainers, Jillian Michaels and Bob Harper. Later down the line, my girl Jen Wenderstrom came in there, but I don't remember her being she wasn't even featured on the documentary, because I don't remember her being so mean. So they're showing the follow-up of these contestants. And for the one man who lost the most weight recorded on Biggest Loser, they're talking about him and how he like went on afterwards to show doctors, had his excess skin removed, like he's the golden child for Biggest Loser. And then they pan to him now, and of course they put him in like the smallest chair possible. He's maybe bigger than when he started, right? Then there's another woman who was in an abusive relationship that was also had a lot of infidelity. And in her mind, everything was about like fitting into the lingerie for her husband. And maybe if I lose weight, my husband wouldn't cheat on me. Basically, was the idea of it. And she goes on the Biggest Loser. She almost dies The first day, she ends up being air vacked out of there. But she is so motivated to lose this weight with a big emphasis on saving her marriage that she goes back. And she's not allowed to she had rhabdo, which is where you like overdo it with exercise and your muscle basically starts to break down into your like and be processed by your kidneys. It can kill you. My cousin actually just while my whole thing with my dad was happening, that happened to my cousin after she went to a spin class and she didn't realize you can change the resistance. So she had never been to a spin class and she's on this like crazy resistance and she ended up in the hospital for like a week and a half. And so it's very scary. But because I need to save my marriage, and that is all based on, and it wasn't all based on, she had kids too. She wanted to obviously be healthy for her kids. But, you know, a big emphasis was if I look a certain way, then I will save my marriage. And that didn't happen, right? He ended up still being a piece of work. And there is a lesson to learn from her. And then also the other two people that stand out to me was a woman who was kind of bullied, not just by the trainers. And I wouldn't even say they bullied her. The stuff we saw was abuse. It was verbal abuse. And she, speaking about it today, starts to cry and get upset and have a visceral reaction to the fact that she had to endure that. Like, that is not okay. And not only did the trainer do that, then everyone started to scapegoat her. And, you know, she had never been treated that way in her life. And she was talking about the experience of that. And then there was these two ladies who were sisters who did it together. And they ended up maintaining their weight loss. And I thought that was really interesting because, you know, as we're going to talk about, there's so many things that they didn't focus on and that is necessary to maintain weight loss. And the interesting thing is that they had each other. And I think that that's really important. So let's start with the chaos of the trainers. That old school mentality of like, I need someone to yell at me and scream at me so that I can get this thing done. Like I need someone to whip my ass into shape. I have people tell me that today. And it is so far from the truth of what is actually necessary to sustain weight loss, to lose weight, to do any sort of new goal. But in Biggest Loser, that was the personality of the coach, of the trainers. It was, do it. I don't care if you throw up. You're not going to be lazy. You need to, and then like cursing at them, calling them names, screaming in their faces. And I still believe that there's an aspect of that in coaching of you just, you know, I see a lot of content creators talk about like, no, you're just lazy. You're just this, you're just that. And you guys still believe that, you know, and I want to make it clear that most of the people that I've encountered, whether it was in an eating disorder treatment facility or in my program, that a lot of the individuals who have a challenging relationship with food or their bodies oftentimes had challenging childhoods. So what that looks like is some of the ones that stand out the most, especially in individuals in larger bodies that struggle with like binge eating, that they have a higher likelihood of sexual abuse in their history. And food and thus gaining weight is actually a protective mechanism for them. The bigger they are, the less attractive they think they will be, or the bigger they are, the more space I take up that you can't hurt me. You're less likely to hurt me, right? So that's number one. Number two, we see like addiction or mental health issues with their parents or someone in their family. So they're constantly like walking on eggshells. They're not able to express themselves. They're not able to be themselves, really. They have to always adapt to the addiction or the mental illness in an effort to stay safe. So food becomes a way to cope. Or individuals, as I've talked about, come from seemingly fine families, but they've learned that their worth and their, you know, their love, their support, the safety has to be earned from an outside source other than themselves, meaning external validation. I can only receive love and safety and connection if I'm achieving, if I'm perfect, if I'm taking care of other people, right? And so that is why food comes in, because if I'm always doing for everyone else, then I'm not expressing myself. I'm not getting my wants and needs met. And just truly, I'm not worthy unless I do that. So food helps you to cope. It helps you to feel a sense of relief from that. And what we don't need is more trauma. What we actually need is more compassion and care and curiosity. However, the Biggest Loser trainers not only screamed at these people, but then were put in a position to do the hard work mentally with them. People with zero experience in working on individuals' mental health. Now, yes, a part of being a trainer is to cheerlead and motivate. However, let's talk about the abuse cycle, because you want me to tell you everything about my life, my most vulnerable parts, but then also you're going to scream at me and verbally abuse me. That's not a conducive environment for the true work to happen. It's almost like, do it, you have to tell me what you're like, your deepest, darkest secrets. And then also I'm going to use those against you in some way. Now, they didn't blatantly use it against them, but the fact that they know these people's struggle, but still would scream at them and call them names, like, that is really, really toxic. And it's no wonder that a lot of the individuals who are on this show did gain the weight back. And I actually was listening to one of my reality TV podcasts, and one of the hosts said that her friend, who was a comedian, was actually on the show and ended up dying from an overdose later in life. And she didn't say it was a direct correlation, but just all of this shit in her head led her to thus overdosing. And I just thought that was really interesting. So the chaos of the trainers was mind-boggling to me. And, today we don't see it as blatant, but we do still see it. We see trainers with a lack of emotional maturity. We see trainers with a lack of empathy and compassion, trainers who are really rigid in what they do in their own lives and expect that other people need to just do it like them. And that's really, really harmful. You will see it all over social media. And again, the documentary is just a extreme version of what still happens today. And I think it's the reason I wanted to talk about this is because it's really important for you all to look for those signs, right? Look for the, aggression, look for the black and white thinking, like, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. You're just choosing not to do. And there is some aspect of that. But like, for me, I'm going to exhaust everything before I'm going there, right? Like, at a certain point, you have a choice. And I'm going to help understand why you can't see that choice. And once we clean that up, if you're still choosing to not do the thing, then that's your choice, right? But there's going to be steps in between me making that assumption. So that was the trainers. Then we have the training. For these individuals, they're at the farm, I believe it was called, or the camp, and they're working out 8 hours a day, plus being on a diet. And unless you're a professional athlete or you are completely consumed with an eating disorder, you're not going to train like that. And the fact that they did not set them up for success and show them what training should look like long term, to show them what eating should look like long term, that they never had a foundation underneath them to do this long term and successfully, of course. And I just found that fascinating. Like, I would never work out 8 hours in a day. And it's so extreme. And that teaches them, like, wow, the only way I can lose weight is these extreme diets and extreme exercise, which is absolutely not true. And for majority of these people, they share their stories, their diet stories. They already went through a lot of extremes. So are we actually teaching them anything different? No. However, they did see results, which they probably saw results from the other diets and extremes that they went on. And we're only keeping the same narrative going. Like number one, you have to do whatever it takes to lose weight, but also you have to do it in extremes. And then, they would put them on these weird challenges where they force them to eat like indulgent foods. I didn't really understand that part. I'm like, how is that teaching them anything? It was like, you'll win money, you'll get more money or points, I don't know, if you eat this pizza or these desserts. Like, what are we teaching there? Instead of being like, yeah, you can actually continue to see weight loss and have these treats, which is what these people needed to learn. They needed to learn how to sustainably work out and feed themselves. That included a good amount of the foods that they loved, but teaching them to remove the scarcity from the foods, teaching them that you can still lose weight and have indulgences. But we didn't do that. And again, a lot of these individuals ended up gaining the weight back. The other thing I found interesting is that the woman I was talking about who said, if I just lost weight, my husband would love me. There was a lesson to learn there, because I hear it all the time that if I just lost weight then, as if weight loss has some sort of magic over your mind, that like losing the weight also loses the negative thoughts about yourself, loses the negative self-perception you see in the mirror, loses all of the defense mechanisms you've created out of shame, out of disappointment, or in hopes to receive love and support and safety. Weight loss doesn't get rid of that. It's still there. And for her, she realized that. She realized, like, I came back, I had lost weight, and my husband still didn't care. And now that's also a him thing, but she said, like, I had to do the work on myself, and real work, not talking to a certified personal trainer about the fact that I remember one man was abused as a child. He had never told anyone that in his life. And he's telling this to not a therapist or anyone with any like trauma-informed expertise. And so I just thought that was a lesson for a lot of women out there. Because again, today we still see that. If I just look a certain way, then I will find love. If I look a certain way, my husband will want to touch me again. If I look a certain way, I will be respected. You have to start with that. You have to be the person to fill yourself up and receive validation from within. And that takes a lot of healing work. And we do that in my program through what we call our parts work, which is a rendition of the Dick Schwartz IFS, internal family systems theory. It's just adapted to coaching since we work as coaches here. So I found that really fascinating as well. And so the sisters were the ones who did maintain their weight loss. But I did find that interesting because they obviously went through it together, and then they had each other to support one another to maintain their weight loss over time. And I don't know what that looked like for them. I just found that fascinating that those two who won together, they also maintained their weight, but who knows what they were doing behind the scenes. And I want to talk about, okay, now where are we at with these people? For a good chunk of them, there was a study that said majority of these people's metabolism was broken because of everything they went through in The Biggest Loser. And I found that really interesting too, because our metabolism doesn't break. It can slow down due to a lack of muscle mass, right, in our bodies, especially if we're going through extreme measures and not fueling ourselves properly. We are over exercising and overtraining, and our body just doesn't feel like it needs energy. It doesn't feel good, so it needs energy, and it's going to remove the thing that's taking a lot of energy or sucking a lot of energy away from it, which is your muscle mass. So now these individuals, they may have lost weight, but There was never a conversation about muscle mass and body fat. So they may have been even more under muscled than they had been previously, because again, there was no maintenance phase. There was no reverse dieting. There was none of that. So of course, I did not learn a foundation to take care of myself thus after. I went through extremes to get to the weight loss. I didn't do any work on my food noise, my body image issues, my issues with my own self-worth. And now I go through this study and they're telling me my metabolism's broken. No, you just weren't set up properly. And again, reverse dieting, living at maintenance, teaching them how to build muscle, teaching them, how to eat properly to maintain that muscle. And then obviously the inside work. I think that the outcome of that research study would have been vastly different. And then the conversation was about Ozempic. And it was interesting because some of the people, like the man who gained all the way back, he's like, nah, I don't want to do that. Like, I've already gone through extremes. Like, I want to do this the healthy way, which kudos to him. I should reach out to him and be like, hey, come join my program. I'll show you how to do it the right way. And then some of them are like, absolutely, I think it's wonderful. And a lot of them are on it. And so I started to like lose interest by that point. But I just found it really fascinating because, again, it was such an extreme way of like a demonstration of weight loss. However, it's not far off of what we still see today. I'm thankful that my community is more, I'm going to say this word, educated than most, especially around weight loss and what it actually looks like. I still have those outliers who are more extreme in their thinking, and I have to do a lot of work with those individuals. However, the fact that my community is, again, more educated, they have a better understanding, they're a little bit more self-aware. I don't get as many of those folks, but I still see it. I see it in comments on social media. I see it in the Ozempic craze. I see it in people, even conversations they have with me, even my own friends. Some of them are like, oh yeah, I'm doing keto because I lost so much weight on that last time. I'm like, well, why didn't you keep the weight off, right? So it's still out there, and just I want you to recognize if you're listening to a trainer and their only way of making you feel motivated is by putting you down in some sense, like that's probably not the person for you, right? For me, I'm not going to coddle you either. I'm going to give you the skills. We're going to do the internal work, but at a certain point, you have a choice to make, right? But there's a difference between that and the person who's just like, well, you don't care enough. And y'all know that's very much out there. And then also the trainer who shows you extremes. I follow a couple of gals, and one of them, she is shredded. She's over, I think she's like 52. And she talks about the fact she works out like 6 to 7 days a week. Rarely shows what she eats because I'm guessing it's still pretty low. She's very small, but like lean. And when you look at her mass, like she's petite. So, and there's a genetic component to that too, but like that extreme is not for you. And of course, like she has before and afters of other women who want to do extremes, but I'm always like, okay, that's great. That's a before and after photo. Like, what does it look like a year from now? Right. As this documentary has shown. And obviously it's been more than a year for these people, but just paying attention to the extremes of the trainer themselves. And then also, just the black and white thinking, the way that they're explaining their process and how they work with clients. Like that's really important too, because you should understand the process that we're going to reverse diet. You're going to live at maintenance for this amount of time. Then when I feel like you're ready because of you having created a foundation, we will go into a fat loss phase. I will assess how you're doing in a fat loss phase. If for some reason you are struggling, we will bring you out, because the worst thing in the world is being mentally in a fat loss phase, but physically and behaviorally doing things that are not allowing you to see results, and then you getting pissed thinking, oh my God, my metabolism's broken. No, you're just behaviors are broken, right? So I just thought it was really interesting. If you haven't watched it, please watch it. If you have, I'd love to hear your comments below. Obviously, the mindset of matter is not that and not extreme. We actually do the work and have the credentials to do the work around your relationship with yourself, your past, your body, and food, on top of teaching you that foundation around exercise, nutrition, and just healthy habits, and teaching you how to put those into effect so that you can do them long term. So if you're interested in coaching, please check out the Clarity Call link. I am taking on only a few new clients. So if you've been kind of teetering with working with me, this would be the time to jump into it before the holidays. This is a perfect time for you to set that foundation so that we're not, getting into the holidays and, feeling like shit. Let's set the foundation now. You'll check out the show notes for the Clarity Call below. And like I always ask you, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with somebody else. I know you probably talked to some girlfriends like, oh my God, did you see that documentary? Like, oh, look, this podcast talks about it. Please share and or rate and review this pod. And just like The Biggest Loser, I think that we've learned and continue to learn that this one last thing is very, very true. And that is what you say in your mind, you see in the mirror. Bye-bye.